whose communities are actually resilient, sustainable, and integrated. So without further ado, let me play the video and I'll do a closing afterwards.
Walang maiiwan. Iyan ang pangako ni Mayor Rex Gatchalian sa bawat Valenzuelano, kasabay ng tuloy-tuloy na pag-asenso ng lungsod. Bawat aspeto ng lungsod ay lubos na tinututukan, tulad na lang ng pabahay na isa sa mga pangunahing haligi ng mabuting pamamahala sa Valenzuela. Upang tugunan ang sektor ng pabahay, ay binuo ng pamahalang lungsod ang housing project na Disiplina Village. Layunin nitong ilipat sa ligtas na lugar ang mga informal settler families na naninirahan malapit sa mga ilog at estero. Noong 2009 ay itinayo ang unang Disiplina Village sa Barangay Ugong bilang tugon sa mga nawalan ng tirahan noong Bagyong Ondoy. Halos 900 pamilya na dating naninirahan sa gilid ng Tulyahan River ang nabiyayaan ng disenteng bahay dito. Noong 2016 naman ay binuksan ang mas malaking Disiplina Village sa Barangay Bignay. Nasa 3,700 pamilya ang maililipat dito.
Dito, minsan tahimik din, tsaka wala din namang gulo dito. Mas maganda talaga yung nandito ka kasi yung dating tinitirahan mo, medyo matubig.
Nakakatulog ka ng ayos kasi wala nang baha. Nagpapasalamat ako sa mga LHA, lalo-lalo kay Mayor.
Nitong October ng 2017, ay tumanggap ng pagkilala ang Disiplina Village matapos ipagkaloob sa Lungsod Valenzuela ang ikatlo nitong Galing Pook Award. Ang Galing Pook ay ang pinakaprestiyosong patimpalak para sa mahusay na pamamahala. Sa katunayan, ay tinagurian itong Mother of All Awards. Ang mga hurado rito ay ang mga pinagkakapitagang pangalan sa sektor ng akademya at pamamahala. Sa kanyang presentation, ay ibinida ni Mayor Rex na hindi lang basta simpleng proyektong pabahay ang Disiplina Village, bagkus ay pag-agapay sa mga Valenzuelano upang makapiglas sa kahirapan.
Let me start off by saying that Disiplina Village is not your ordinary housing project. In our opinion, Disiplina Village is an emancipatory program aimed at putting back dignity in people's lives and freeing people from poverty. And when we say poverty, it's not just the physical poverty that we're talking about. We're talking about mental and emotional poverty. It's a multidimensional approach that tries to deal with solutions outside the four corners of a home. Most of the time kasi pag ginawang housing project, it's about the four corners lang ng isang bahay. But for us, we'd like to think that poverty is skin deep. Mas malalim siya than the house. And we want to make sure that mentally, emotionally, physically, we're addressing poverty.
Gumamit ang Galing Pook Awards National Selection Committee ng 4 na criteria upang masala ang mga finalist. Una, innovation o pagkamalikhain sa pagpapatupad ng programa. Ikalawa, people's participation o partisipasyon ng komunidad. Ikatlo, transferability and replicability o kung madali itong gayahin upang maipatupad din sa ibang lokalidad. At ikaapat, sustainability o garantiya na maipagpapatuloy ang programa mabago man ang lokal na pamunuan. Kwalipikado ang Valenzuela sa 4 na batayang ito. Kaya naman, mula sa halos 160 aplikasyon ay nakapasok tayo sa 10 nagwagi at ginawaran ng Galing Pook Seal.
On behalf of all the LGUs, maraming salamat sa pagkakataon na mabigyan ng pagkakataon na maikwento ang aming mga storya. Hindi ko araw-araw na nabibigyan ng tsansa ang mga LGUs na maikwento lang sa entablado yung maliit na mga proyekto na para sa amin nakalaki. Sana pagpatuloy ng Galing Pook ng ganitong exercise kasi dito natin nakikita na ang mga local government units kaya naman po pag-uusapan. So muli, maraming salamat. Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
At taong 2020 naman nang buksan ang pangatlong Disiplina Village sa Barangay Lingunan. Ngayong 2021 ay pasisimulan na ang pagtatayo ng ika-4 na Disiplina Village sa Barangay Arkong Bato, katabi ng Arkong Bato Park. Layunin ng pamahalang lungsod ng Valenzuela ang patuloy na pagkalinga, paghubog at pagbuo ng mga buhay ng Valenzuelano. Marami pang magkakaroon ng bagong bahay, bagong buhay sa umuunlad na Valenzuela City.
Okay, so there you have it. Let me just go through the broad strokes of Disciplina Village. When we talk about public housing and climate change, it's a very vast and very broad, multidimensional issue that every single local government unit, especially urbanized ones, are trying to grapple with. In Disciplina Village, when we started, we had close to around 7,000 or 8,000 informal settlers living beside our riverbanks. If you can imagine the geography of Valenzuela, to our southern flank is the Tuliahan River, probably one of the most polluted river systems there are in the country. To our northern flank is the Maykawayan River, which has been a victim of tanneries from Bulacan for the past how many years. And it's only now that we're starting to feel the impact of it, siltation, so on and so forth. So when we were conceptualizing Disciplina Village, we wanted to make sure that our residents were away from harm's way, because whenever it rained, we have 2 major river systems overrunning the whole city. And the first victims will be the 7,000 families living beside Tuliahan River and Maykawayan River, as well as its tributaries. Number 2, we wanted to make sure that when we do move these families away, we are not just changing their mindsets about poverty physically. We wanted to make sure that we were changing the mindsets or the emotional well-being of these individuals, that they're no longer informal settlers, but rather they are responsible community dwellers. And in order for us to do that, we had to make sure that it's in city so that it's sustainable. We wouldn't want to move them somewhere else and only to end up them coming back into the riverbanks, as we saw in the older versions of housing projects in the country. Number 2, we want to make sure that the community was sustainable, meaning it had complete facilities. What you would normally see in a brochure in a middle-class subdivision or a private community being sold. That's exactly how we wanted to package it. Disciplina villages have their own schools, elementary, high school, daycare, barangay hall, fire station. Name the amenity, it would be there. We had envisioned a self-contained integrated community that is in city. We also had to make sure that the other issues were addressed, such as food sustenance, so our discipline or augmenting the income of a family. So our discipline villages also have community gardens wherein the women would plant and harvest on their own and sell them in the local markets. By the way, the Disciplina villages also have their own markets, own transport terminals. Again, like I said, name the amenity, chances are the Disciplina village has it. We also wanted to make sure, again, that we change the emotional and mental well-being of our citizens, that they're no longer squatters or informal settlers, but they're rather responsible homeowners. And we did that through the pioneering concept of public rental in the Philippines. Disciplina Village is an innovation because we innovated public rental, meaning we don't give you the title. We will never give you the title until we are sure that you are now ready to become a responsible homeowner. So every single resident there signs up with a perpetual use contract, meaning you get to use the unit for as long as you follow the rules. So when we move our residents to the Disciplina villages, they're given a Disciplina village handbook. This is a handbook that what for you and me may be normal, no? These are guidelines on being a responsible homeowner, like bawal nakahubad, you can't be walking around naked, you can't be putting your underwear, wet underwear in the hallways, hindi mo pwede gawing sabitan yan, you can't be making your dogs pooping around or running around everywhere. Kasi you have to remember, these communities, where they came from, walang rules. It's the wild, wild west of riverbanks. No? Parang may kasabihan nga, di ba, humanap ka ng siga, ang pinakasiga normally nakatira sa tabing riles o tabing ilog. So we had to change the culture, the mindset, the emotional well-being of these people. So when you get to move into a Disciplina village, the first thing that happens is you get a unit, we make you sign off a contract, a social contract of sorts, that you get to use the unit perpetually. Pero you have to follow the ground rules set forth in the homeowner's handbook. And you're made to attend numerous lectures and tasks about financial literacy, family planning, so on and so forth. So it's a complete package. We're trying to change them physically, the units, where they live, but we're also trying to change them emotionally or mentally, making them understand that they're no longer informal settlers, but rather they're responsible community dwellers. So I think the video and what I'm trying to say now pretty much captures what the essence is. But just to give you one last parting shot, we started with one Disciplina village. Now we're up to 4. We already have 3 running. We're building the 4th one. And by the end of my term, which is next year, this is my last term, I can tell you straight in the eye that we will no longer have a single Valenzuelano living in a danger zone beside riverbanks, tributaries, or anything. They're all safely in our inlands, within our city confines, not throwing them away in the faraway provinces of the peripherals of Metro Manila. And they are living in sustainable, integrated townships or communities that hopefully will transform their emotional well-being as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Rex, for your presentation and basically for giving us the visual of the Disciplina village and highlighting the importance of upskilling the ISFs. And as you mentioned, they are no longer considered informal settler families moving into the Disciplina village, and really highlighting the emancipation component, and trying to also pick up the different upskilling components of the toolkit or handbook that you mentioned, focusing on financial literacy, family planning. It's really a holistic transformation as I was listening to you. And perhaps later, maybe just a very quick question before we move to the action. In terms of upskilling, usually a major concern is people who are relocated would move back to the original, to where they are from, mainly because of livelihood and economic reasons. So is there a particular focus on upskilling as towards the economic aspect?
Just you have to remember, from our past experience, yung mga NHA housing, where they give you the title kaagad. You know, it's very tempting for these poor families na pag nagipit, ang unang isasanla yung titulo. So pag sinanla na yung titulo, that's the fastest thing they can give to the loan sharks, the title to that unit or the rights to that unit. So pag wala na, balik na sila sa riverbank. So one protective mechanism we have will be you can't sell that contract. That contract is perpetually yours. You cannot sell it. Number two, there is no title to speak of, so to speak. Number two, all our communities are in city, meaning you're not uprooting them from their community environs. The Disciplina villages are located probably 30 minutes away from the riverbanks where they used to live in. So you're still in Valenzuela, you have the same zip code, you're in the same address, so there's no the disincentive of yung relocation sa bundok or sa probinsya. Wala doon yon. So they're not really being uprooted from what they're used to. The schools are still there, diba? But number three, more than anything, when we do plan Disciplina villages, we make sure that they're not in the how do I put it, in the corners of the city, but rather they are in the industrial belt of the city. Yep. You have to remember, Valenzuela is not a very big city. From the tip of Valenzuela to the other tip of Valenzuela, I can commute it in 20 minutes. We're not talking about a province here. We're talking about the city here. So, maliit lang ang Valenzuela. But going back, para sa kanila, mayor, may sasakyan ka, kaya madali. Kami nagta-tricycle or nagbabike. So what we did strategically for these Disciplina villages, they're all located in one industrial belts of the city, meaning malapit yung new source of livelihood in the event that we're moving them from pag ayaw na nila mag-commute. Or two, what we're trying to do is put them in commercial areas. In fact, the fourth Disciplina village is in a highly commercial national highway of the city. So, hindi mo kasi pwedeng ibenta sa kanila yung konsepto na relocation pero tinapon kita sa bundok at tinanggal kita sa kinagisnan mo na komunidad. But rather, nasa Valenzuela ka, nasa prime areas ka, there's access to transpo, may transportation, may mobility. Our Disciplina villages come with terminals. Meron silang intermodal terminals. So, there are routes there for jeep, bus, or tricycle. So you're not totally isolated. So physically malapit ka na, may transpo pa, and again, you're inside Valenzuela City. Hindi yung parang tinapon kita sa probinsya. And from my experience, it makes it easier to convince them to fold up their shanty in the riverbank because Valenzuela lang yung lilipatan nila. So, naging madali sa amin yung experience na yun.
Thank you very much.
Georgina, before I move on, sorry, you just pointed out something that everybody might find interesting, what I'm about to say. I said we are strategically able to plan because we use the power of expropriation. All our Disciplina villages are expropriated property of the government. Not only do you save government money because, di ba, we're using tax declaration, syempre dadaan sa korte yan, but it's graft-free. Walang bentahan where it normally gets very muddled kasi may commission si mayor, may commission si ganito, and also it takes time to negotiate. Ito, expropriate. You go to the court, you fight in the court with all transparency kung magkano yung lote. So, when you expropriate, you're able to strategically plan where you want to put these Disciplina villages, near factories, near highways, and within the city.
Thank you very much for clarification and pointing out the key features that really makes this sustainable and effective in terms of protecting Filipino families on climate change risks. And we've pre-identified two reactors to also lead us in our discussion. So let us bring in now Dr. Emma Poryo, a professor of Department of Sociology and Anthropology from School of Social Sciences of Ateneo de Manila. And she is currently also a project leader and principal investigator of the Transdisciplinary Action Research Project of the Coastal Cities at Risk, investing in climate change and disaster resilience in the Philippines. She co-directs the Master of Disaster Risk and Resilience, MDRR, at the Ateneo de Manila University. Dr. Poryo.
Thank you very much. Alam mo, mahirap magsalita ka after Mayor Rex. Mayor Rex says all. Isa siya sa pinakamagaling na magsalita. So, okay. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Edna, and your group for inviting us. And most of all, if you listen, I've been showcasing Valenzuela's innovations in, for example, I used the case of ICFP Disciplina Bignay and the UN, a case study, UN Handbook of disaster risk reduction. And I also presented on environmental migration and climate crisis in Barcelona in last May, and I used this. So I would like to thank Mayor Rex here for basically, allowing me to work with the people in Valenzuela. Valenzuelans are very good. And it's because of the leadership, I think, that the government really opened spaces for them to participate, to be empowered, and also to do what they can contribute to making Valenzuela a good place, a progressive city, and really contributing to that. So thank you very much, Max. So my comments basically will structured on 3 points. Number one, basically, we are, as the Human Development Report said, we are in a twin crisis. Climate crisis, crisis of poverty and inequality, exacerbated COVID. Two, these displacements because of the climate crisis, like Ondoy, Yola, and all these places, have created this, ruptures, social ruptures in mobility and livelihoods and the like. So I would like to say that risk governance in Valenzuela City is really responding proactively, innovatively into the twin crisis of our time. And let me contextualize these comments. So as you know, climate disasters also interact with complex emergencies, conflicts, and it exacerbates really the lockdown. So basically, people move to the cities, to urban areas in search of secure places. As Mayor Rex pointed out, they are there in the Tolyahan River and the river lines. So if you look at this, if you look at the urban poverty morphology of the country, you will see that the poverty incidence in the Philippine provinces, you can see there, and those are the people who go to the city. And also the combined risk of the climate and geophysical risk. So if you pair that with our incidents, the climate disasters, the sea level rise, and also if you locate it globally, they say, what is the major risk really? It's because of the interstate conflict and failure of urban planning and governance, which in Valenzuela, they have shown that with proper urban planning and development investments in housing and services and in creating capacity in the people to become productive citizens, you can solve this problem. So I like to put this because basically migration has been always with us, starting with Mary and Joseph going to for a census. So you can see there. So Pope Francis opened this, all these migrants, in St. Peter's Square, the Jews, the like that. And you can see, El Nino, it transforms human security in cities. You'd see here the Mangahan floodway in Kitsana in 2009, Yolanda and Tacloban City in 10 City, Mangkok in 2018. And normally I like red, but red in this case as an index of climate change vulnerability is not bad. You can see Philippines. And in sea level rise, you can see that in the Philippines, there's 1,610 municipalities that will be inundated with the sea level rise, okay? And severe floods, water stress, water insecurity. And really, as I always tell people, our urban imaginaries is a too much water, flooding, or too little during El Nino. So urbanization and really expanding demography, economy, and migration results in the displacement and other social. Zamboanga 2012. Of course, these people will move to the cities, poverty and security in the countryside, displacement in Mindanao. You can see this, and you can see these people here. They will come to the cities, and as my studies show that people come to Manila. You can see this. They come here with their families in search of livelihood, and you can see that really we need a whole of government approach, which has demonstrated in the Venezuela case that they really the society approach to respond to environmental migration, human security, and the climate and disaster crisis. So here it is. I want to show you again beautiful pictures of the people of Venezuela. So I would like to conclude by saying that I always tell in Galing Pook, I validated Disiplina Ogong, Disiplina Bignay in 2012, 2017. I always say to people, if only 50% of the LGUs in this country are galing po like Valenzuela, maibang buhay natin. We have a transformed city, we have a transformed society. So basically, I'd like to go back again that I want to synthesize by saying that in Venezuela, we're very happy that we're okay, say we do not need rely on the local government. And I would say that if you look at the short video of Mayor Rex, everything is there already in terms of what I call in the coastal cities at risk, wherein Valenzuela is also a partner alongside Pasig, Quezon City, and Iloilo. We always say that excellent local governance is science-based in its planning. It is risk-informed. It maps out what are the at-risk areas, who are at-risk populations, and then provide basically services that moves towards resilience, and that in their investment, the planning and development is raised. So I would say in closing that thank you very much, Mayor Rex, for showing us, and I hope many people that solutions are in our hands. I always tell people it's not that we do not have money or resources. It's not just put into the right places. And I think Valenzuela has shown to us how to be systems oriented in terms of your planning, how to be proactive, and also this is very important under the Mandanas ruling. Under the full devolution, I think we need local government who can really mobilize its resources to respond to the needs of the people, especially in closing the gap in inequality, in restoring poverty, and also responding to the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Poryo, for sharing with us your insights and your expertise on the area of DRR. And I truly appreciate the frame of risk governance and risk-informed decisions in the context of pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, and looking forward the different contexts on Mandanas Garcia ruling, and also presenting the contextual drivers for environmental migration. And hopefully we could have a deeper conversation on that in the...
I want Mayor Rex to train this, mayors that, this is how to run your government. This is how to spend the money of the people, Thank you, Mayor Rex. Yeah.
Mayor Rex, you're on mute.
Professor Emma, nice to see you again. Thank you for the kind words, but it's not me. It's really not me. Alam nyo,
I know.
So many experts, no? Like sila Dr. Emma, friends
but
from...
you're the conductor. You need a conductor.
We did get a lot of inputs, especially from the community itself. No, I cannot re-emphasize. The model of Disciplina Village, we actually picked the minds and the brains of the residents themselves. When we were crafting Disciplina Village, we were asking them during an FGD numerous times, ano ba yung mga problema nila? Natural na kasi, nasa baha kami, pero may iba pa silang sinasabi doon eh. Na sometimes those nuances help us craft that handbook that we use. Like one of the nuances that they would always say is, yun nga kanina, para sa inyo kasi malapit lang ho yung isang barangay ng Valenzuela sa kabilang barangay ng Valenzuela, pero para sa amin malayo ho yun kasi magta-tricycle pa ho kami, magbabayad pa ho kami. That's why part of the solution there was to come up with integrated communities na nilalakad na lang nila yung mga school nila. Kasi going to school or the stopping going to school or spending for school nung time na yon is an incentive for them to go back to the riverbanks kasi mas malapit yon. I always like to say this. The right answer really comes from the constituent themselves, but it's so tempting to drown out their voice in a room, in a meeting, because when you're mayor, when you're an elected official, congressman, mayor, governor, konsehal, your voice is the loudest in that room. So if you can't taper off that voice, or if you forget to taper your own voice, you drown out those nuances. Sa kanila ko rin narinig yun. Mayor, pag nilipat mo ho kami dyan ng sama-sama, kasi one of our Disciplina villages has 4,000 families. Galing kami sa iba-ibang segment, hindi naman kami magkakakila, iba-ibang segment ng ilog. Ang mangyayari ho sa amin, Mayor, puro siga lang kami lahat doon. So, yung sustainability niyan mawawala. Bukas makalawa, baka may saksakan na doon, may patayan na doon. So that's why we came up with the house rules na medyo stringent. So again, the right answers come from the content providers like sila Dr. Emma and of course from the community themselves.
Mayor Rex, sabi nila, yan si Mayor Rex, accountability, transparency, at saka surveillance, sabi nila, nako, alas 11, nag-ronda yun na, tinatawag kung sino. Sabi,
Hello? Okay.
I think si Dr. had technical issues. Yeah.
I thought it was me, Mayor Rex, but thank you for your point on the citizens'
thank you, bye-bye.
Citizens' participation and participatory governance that makes the entire model sustainable and safe for all. And let's bring in Mombet Gosun, who is the former secretary of the DENR and former presidential assistant on climate change. In 2007, she was recognized by the United Nations Environment Program as the champion of the Earth for Asia and the Pacific. She is a member of various NGOs and also a member of Galing Pook Foundation. Mombet Gosun. Please unmute, ma'am.
John, and to the organizers for inviting me to join you for this session and be part and talk of a topic that's very close to my heart. Thank you very much, Emma, for setting the context and the framework actually for this overall discussion. And thank you very much, Mayor Rex. Good to see you again. And Disciplina Village is actually a very good example of an adaptation done by a local government on an adaptation to climate change to reduce the risk to its constituents. As Mayor Rex said, that's really putting people out of harm's way. And adaptation really simply means reducing the risk to people, infrastructure, properties, land, or whatever, so that they will not be adversely affected or minimize the adverse effect of climate change to them. And the objective is really to build resiliency. And that, I think, is now a term that most of us use. Because when we talk of risk, we're really talking of three elements. We have the hazard, and in this case, we have the climate hazards now of excessive rainfall, very high temperatures, very strong droughts, which are now a reality, a given reality in our world. Multiply that with the exposure of the people and their assets, and also their vulnerability, their susceptibility to those hazards. So when you manage the risk, like what Mayor Rex and Valenzuela has done, you are actually reducing the likelihood that these people and whatever they own will actually be affected by climate change. In addition, as pointed out, the Disciplina Village provides a complete package. I really want to take up something that you mentioned, Mayor Rex, because this is very close to me. We really think that the urban development in the country should really go for more complete small package, pack of communities that where people can go about their day-to-day lives just by simply walking or biking. That will not only reduce traffic, but actually ensure that you have a more sustainable community. And that's why we were impressed with this. For complete transparency, Emma and I were actually part of the selection committee that chose Valenzuela among our winners. So when I received this invitation about upskilling, environmental migrants, I really did not know exactly what upskilling meant. And so I looked it up, and it's really just simply the process of using additional training, education to build upon the existing skills of whether it's an existing skill of a local government or the communities themselves. So how do we upskill community members and even Valenzuela, for example, in terms of ensuring that they are more resilient to climate hazards? I want to focus on two things. One is water management and greening and solid waste. We all know that we all need water. Water is life. Without water, there simply is no life, no economic activity, nothing. And yet, only a little over 2.6% of all the water in the world is actually fresh water. And fresh water is one of the most threatened under climate change. Rainfall variability is now a new reality. As mentioned, we have more water when we don't need it. We have less water when we don't need it. And with increasing temperature, the demand for water is going up, and also evaporation is also going up. Now, with climate change and the fact that the glaciers and the ice caps are melting, sea level is also rising. So some of our groundwater resources will be contaminated with fresh water, with seawater, and therefore further reducing the available fresh water for us to use. So how do we adapt to ensure that we are resilient? How do we upskill ourselves so that we can adapt? So simply, one is it's the general program is called Water Demand Management, WDM. It simply means making the most of whatever water it is that you already have. It includes water conservation measures that unfortunately we only practice pag times ng drought, yung El Nino. Actually, we should make it a way of life. You know, you don't keep the tap running when you're brushing your teeth, diba? When you wash your dishes, alisin mo muna yung laman ng mga plato, use up langgana for your initial rinse. Pag naglinis ka ng tricycle, sasakyan, hindi mo pinaliliguan, gumamit ka ng balde at tabo. Things like that should actually become now a way of life. And this can be incentivized actually, Mayor, at the local government level by, recognizing and giving awards to either households or buildings that reduce their water consumption. What WDM also means simply ensuring that there are no water leaks. And how to detect water leaks is something that USAID project that I was involved in actually developed, and we have guidelines for this. We actually have a guidebook, and we can train the household and the leaders per building on how to actually do leak detection. So again, that can be done on a regular basis. WDM also means ensuring that you use the quality of water for the task at hand. Sa tingin ko lahat tayo mag-agree, we don't need drinking water quality to flush our toilets, to wash our clothes, di ba? And to clean our floors, clean our vehicles. Ano yung ideal doon? Rainwater. Rainwater should actually be harvested and stored. Napakaswerte natin sa Pilipinas kasi we get about 2,600 ml of rainwater every year compared to India, for example, who only gets about 700. Alam mo ba, sa study ni Secretary natin sa Agriculture ngayon, sabi niya kasi nag-work siya dun sa India, they harvest 60% of their rainwater kasi nga kulang yung tubig nila. Sa Pilipinas, we harvest about 4%. Sayang, we should harvest this rainwater, and maganda sana, Mayor, in the next design of the Disciplina Village, ideally, lalagyan lang naman natin ng gutter tsaka yung downspout and collect that rainwater, parang yun dun sa probinsya, either through a cistern or a series of tanks, because it can really be used for all of these other needs. And of course, that's nothing to stop us from still doing it now. No, it will also, of course, really reduce flooding. At the village level, to reduce flooding, maganda, Mayor, I'm really happy to see na may mga fish pond tayo. I've been pushing for really more lagoons. Kasi tayo, pag merong mga low-lying areas, the knee-jerk reaction is tambakan. Mali, palalimin. Para we capture the water kasi ang tubig will naturally go to the lowest point. Para then we can have these freshwater lagoons. Lagyan natin ng mga tilapia ba o bangus or even ulang, freshwater shrimps. And then if we put flowering plants around it, it becomes a beautiful park. We've actually done that in some Gawad Kalinga communities. No? So meron ng source ng protein locally, meron ka pang park. At the household level naman, paano ito gagawin? I want to share what the people of Payata shared with me. Sabi nila, Ma'am, hindi nyo na kailangan ituro sa amin yan. Nung panahon na in early January 2004, December kasi, we actually got 55% less water than we usually receive in the month of December. So may problema tayo na baka magkakulangan ng tubig. Sabi nila, kasi kami, pag naligo kami, nakatungtong na kami sa planggana. Kasi nga binibili nila yung truck-in water. Can you imagine how expensive that is? So yung pinagliguan nila, guess where they use it? Not just to flush the toilet. The second use nila, they reuse it to do their laundry. Kasi yung initial wash natin para tanggalin yung dumi, hindi naman kailangang malinis na tubig, nasa final rinse lang. And after that, saka nyo lang gagamitin, yung pangatlo, yun na, pang flush ng toilet. So the same quantity of water used 3 times. So we can really, again, teach that and make that a way of life without sacrificing the health of people. WDM4, it also means water efficiency. We need to use water fixtures, mga faucet, mga shower head, na water efficient, meaning they use less water. Pwede nga, Mayor, merong ginagamit na aerator no? Na pwede mo ikabit sa faucet, sa gripo, and it will displace 30% of the water. So in terms of water pressure, akala mo malakas pa rin, pero actually 30% noon hangin na. So you are saving 30% immediately every time you turn on your faucet. Again, that can still be done as an adjustment now with the households, but it would be good to be considered when we're constructing the new villages, for example. In addition to water management, the other thing that the pandemic naman taught us is the importance of having our own food sources, di ba? So hindi na yung reliant ka sa labas. So napakaganda na may community gardens dito sa ating mga disciplina villages. Ideally sana, lahat ng mga open spaces, gamitin na natin to grow our own food, no? Urban greening talaga. At pwedeng, nakita ko kasi sa mga pictures nga na meron tayong building, may grass tayo bago yung sidewalk. Bawat building can have their own garden plots and managed by the community. Tapos pwede yung isang building sila yung pinakbet mix, yung kabila yung sinigang mix, yung kabila yung chop suey. No? Ganon din ang ginawa namin noon sa Gawad Kalinga para time ng harvest, they can just exchange vegetables or kung may excess, they can even sell them. Now, we do know that urban area, syempre limited naman ng space, di ba? And so with limited land, we need to be innovative. Ano pa ang available? Meron tayong maraming pader. Pader ng residential buildings, pader ng schools, na lahat ng facilities na nandyan. So pwede tayong maglagay ng green walls, maglagay tayo ng bamboo, at yung mga vegetables that are creeping, you know, like string beans, alugbate, and the like, yun ang pwede namang itanim natin dito. That way, may available food yung community, and at the same time, kasi lahat ng green, nag-expel ng oxygen, di ba? So, nai-improve din yung microclimate natin sa ating lugar. Ina-absorb nila yung carbon dioxide kasi yun ang pagkain nila, and at the same time, they give us the oxygen that we badly need. And to support this urban farming, so to speak, the MRFs can actually incorporate composting of the biodegradable waste if it doesn't have it yet, no? Not just from the biodegradable waste from the households, pero pati na lalo na sa palengke, marami talagang biodegradable waste dyan di ba? So wala rin tayong lugar para gumawa ng mga windrow kasi doon na pwede. We can use more high-tech like the bioreactors developed by the OST para mahihasten mo yung decomposition, and yet the space required is very little, coupled with shredders. Again, we can train the community members on how to run the shredders and bioreactors so that they can generate their own compost, which can serve as soil conditioners. And in addition to that, of course, other greening, native trees, even kung may small patch, pwede tayo magkaroon ng maliit na bamboo forest, which will beautify the area, or just shrubs, flowering shrubs, while at the same time improving, being part of the climate adaptation naman kasi binabawas yung carbon dioxide in the air. I was just thinking of this more granular, simple upskilling of that can be done at the community level by household members and also by the local government so that we can really adapt to the impacts of climate change and build resiliency. Nandyan din yung reskilling, which is teaching them new skills like being more tech savvy, so there will be more options for livelihood and employment. But that's another topic altogether. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Secretary Gosun. And talk about upskilling, all of the concrete, actionable items that could be implemented in the Disciplina Village, and not just there, but in different parts of the country in terms of the water demand management and urban farming to ensure the sustainability component for our DRRCC, Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Change Adaptation efforts. I want to, at this point, recognize and thank the reason why we are all here today. It was Dr. Edna Ko, who is hosting this conference and had the bright idea of bringing our Galing Pook family in this parallel session. Let's hear from Dr. Edna Ko, the Director of UPC FAL.
What could I say? I mean, I can't say anything more. Congratulations and salute, Galing Pook. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Mayor Rex, maybe you have some.
Georgia, Secretary Bibet, nice to see you again. It's been quite some time. Actually, I will expect a call from you or an email from me, Secretary, because I find the water management plans concrete and must be done. Actually, we're building our 4th Disciplina Village, and we can probably retrofit the bigger ones also. One thing though, sa Disciplina Village, ano na kami doon, meron kaming literal na bahay kubo. Name me the product in the song of Bahay Kubo. It's grown in our urban garden. They just didn't show it too much in the pictures, but the concept there was, we wanted to provide a second source of livelihood or income in the household. But take note that the women there cannot leave kasi wala naman daycare. Kasi may daycare, pero half day ang daycare. So, you know, they're contained in that community. So every single green patch there is precisely what we did. Kaya nga sa name me a product in that kantang Bahay Kubo, nandun yon. Umabot pa kami sa tilapia, meron kaming bibe, meron kaming mushrooms in a shroom house. But one thing I did pick up from you, and I'm texting our people, is yung crawling plants. You're right. Wall is abundant there. Pader. So hydroponics, I think, will come into play. I think nasasabit lang ata yun. But you're right. Yung crawling plants, we'll definitely explore. Mura lang yon. We're putting it there from your inputs right now. Vertical gardens rather than horizontal gardens. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you for the inputs.
We do have a few more minutes and would like to invite people who are joining us in this session to ask their questions if there are any. You can use the Zoom chat function. You could also raise your hand or simply unmute yourself so that we could hear you. If there's any other questions from the group. Are you still with us? Maybe use the reaction function, thumbs up. We know it's the end of the day, and we want to feel people's presence in this room. So I think you're all here, and we've seen comments from the group about the excellent project for relocation as a sustainable development in local communities from Rose Luzara, and commending also the very good presentation of Mayor Rex from Nelmar Caraga. What I'm really picking up from this conversation resonates very much with Galing Pook's, we call it the 3S, the safe, smart, and sustainable communities. As we advocate for adaptive and innovative programs led by local governments, we have learned through the years that the 3S needs to be present in each initiative. And in the model that we talked about this afternoon, the safety aspect covers both the health component as well as the peace and order component. Mayor Rex mentioned that the importance of listening to people, the possible risks of putting people who do not know each other in one area, it falls under the safety component in terms of ensuring harmony and camaraderie among the families within one village. And also the health component, access to water, sanitation, and health facilities to ensure access to nutritious food is really also a matter of safety on the healthcare side. The smart aspect is really the use of the geohazard maps. I mean, what prompted the proactive in-city relocation is really understanding where the danger zones are and who the families are, and this requires using technology, using data and evidence to be proactive in moving people to safer places that will reduce their vulnerabilities from the risks of climate change, and ensure that they will be living in safe and sustainable communities. And the aspect of sustainability here we're seeing is the urban farming component that Secretary Gosun explained very well, and we're happy that this might also spur a collab with the city government of Valenzuela through the examples that were shared. And there's also the aspect of the water demand management, water efficiency, and disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation. And the 3S will really relies a lot on different levels of upskilling. Different levels of upskilling, because we talk about upskilling on the aspect of building knowledge, skills, and attitude at the individual level. The toolkit, the change in the mindset really happens at the individual level, but also at the family level and the community level. And there's also a shift in the attitudes and the values of people. And coming into this, actually, when you mention upskilling, it's I really look at it more on the technical side of employment and livelihood. And here we have really defined quite expansively the different aspects of upskilling when we talk about environmental migration in the context of climate resiliency and sustainable development in local communities. And I would like to thank Mayor Rex for leading us in this discussion, Professor Edna Ko for putting us together here, and I hope everyone else truly enjoyed this session, and our actors, Dr. Emma Poryo and Secretary Gosun. I would like to actually offer the final words to Mayor Rex for our closing, maybe. Go ahead, Mayor.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for this very informative session. Actually, in building sustainable communities, there is no right answer off the get-go. You really have to assimilate and try to add more things to make it better for our people. In fact, just this afternoon, I got so much input from both Dr. Emma and Secretary Bibet. Secretary Bibet, your idea on crawling horizontal gardens for food is something that we can immediately implement. We're running out of green space there kasi konti lang naman. And then, like you said, retrofitting the buildings for water catchment is something that is very doable, and we can do it immediately. But of course, in upskilling our people, we have to make them understand on how to utilize that water meant for purposes beyond drinking, kasi pag madumi yung tubig, hindi na mainom. But I think we just have to teach them that these can be used for, like you said, washing your cars, washing your plants, or watering your plants. So much things that I learned this afternoon, and I hope we can assimilate it in as fast as time as possible, so we can make our communities more sustainable, more integrated, and more livable.
Thank you very much, Mayor Rex. And we now turn the floor over to our conference organizers.
Thank you for participating in this parallel session. Thank you also to Galing Pook and our experts, Mayor Rex Gatchalian, Dr. Emma Poryo, and Ms. Mombet Gosun for sharing innovative ideas on upskilling environmental migrants for climate resiliency and sustainable development in local communities.